given that agencies have been slowly observing these mandates, all efforts seem to mobilize the public sector towards achieving the involvement of women and men towards equal footing in public funds and state opportunities, and the compliance of international covenants like the Beijing Platform for Action and the Convention on the Elimination of Discrimination Against Women, or CEDAW, are reflected in the gender-responsive laws and agency mandated to monitor GAD mainstreaming, which is the Philippine Commission on Women. But GAD must be confronted with another hurdle that is affecting these developments. The laws, the state, and the culture of the Philippines remain binary and heteronormative in the recognition of gender and sexuality. According to Galang Philippines, Comprehensive Sexuality Education, the way forward, while there is a law, like the Magna Carta of Women, that enforce mainstreaming of gender equality in the flagship programs of the government agencies, local government units, and government-owned and controlled corporations, it is predominantly on stereotypical and heteronormative notions of gender, which in effect exclude our statuses of women in terms of their sexuality. The most evident manifestation of this problem is the long-term interpellation and blockage of the SOGIESC Equality Bill, or the Anti-Discrimination Bill, which is already stuck in Congress for 23 years, despite the Philippines being signatory to the UN Rights Resolution on Human Rights, Sexual Orientation, and Gender Identity in 2014. This has led LGBTQ plus activists and advocates to propose SOGIESC inclusivity into the operations of both public and private institutions in a move that the ASEAN SOGIE caucus called SOGIESC mainstreaming. So SOGIESC mainstreaming aims to forward gender and sexual diversity and inclusion as essential aspects in development theory and practice. The closest platform for state or government intervention for SOGIESC would be what we were calling a while ago the GAD framework, or Gender and Development Framework, especially since both SOGIESC and GAD aim for gender equality. For this initiative, the ASC recommended actions that require cross-movement work and strategic alliances across broader human rights, gender justice, and social justice movements. SOGIESC mainstreaming is also linked to the implementation of comprehensive sexuality education as defined by UNESCO. As they say, CSE is education delivered in formal and non-formal settings that is based on gender equality. CSE contributes to gender equality by building awareness of the centrality and diversity of gender in people's lives. SOGIESC mainstreaming is also encouraged. SOGIESC mainstreaming is also encouraged in international instruments such as the United Nations Development Program's Handbook for Parliamentarians, where they recommended gender mainstreaming bodies to ensure SOGIESC is mainstreamed on various aspects of strategic planning, gender equality policies, parliamentary research, publication and analysis, and all other gender-related concerns. So while lobbying for SOGIESC Equality Bill's passage, like what Dr. Gio Potes said a while ago, Filipino activists also have relied on local government units within provinces, cities, and municipalities that pass anti-discrimination or SOGIESC ordinances. As of now, there are only 50, and we have 1,100 local government units. So SOGIESC mainstreaming within anti-discrimination mechanisms allows its introduction and conversations within the Gender and Development Framework. Within GAD's continuing implementation, development workers have analyzed and proposed various shifts in perspective in implementing gender and development, especially on how institutions approach sexuality. Susie and Andrea Cornwall conducted a workshop with fellow international development workers, scholars, and advocates in 2008, and the succeeding outcome was published in an article titled Sexuality and the Development Industry. The paper analyzed how development frameworks around the world have been oblivious of conversations on sexuality because of the primary obstacle of heteronormativity, which is premised upon what Stella and Nyanzi writes as taxonomic gender binaries that limit their gender analysis to polarized dichotomies between men and women, male and female, masculine and feminine. Apart from this binary tendency, sexuality is also framed negatively as a problem which needs fixing. After 6 years, Jolly and Cornwall came up with a reassessment that saw the rise of sexuality's visibility in the frameworks of development, such as comprehensive sexual education and the inclusion of LGBT rights. But these efforts were also consequently faced with a rise in opposition. Development remains heteronormative in responses to concerns on sexuality, but sporadic discussions on sexuality, increasing visibility of transgender and intersex rights, and also action towards attainment of LGBT rights have all blossomed. Approaching Cornwall and Jolly's assessments, Nyanzi would suggest ways of redressing development's approach to sexuality through these specific strategies. So are we focused on fundamental issues of power and inequity, constant questioning of assumptions, reclaim development as a space for activism, a pleasure-based development framework, and categories of analysis and intervention to be interrogated and reconceptualized from the perspectives of those who are categorized. From these perspectives of Cornwall, Jolly, and Nyanzi, we can look at different efforts of opening up gender and development to be inclusive of sexuality, particularly in the emerging framework of SOGIESC that sprang from the Yogyakarta Principles, an international guide on SOGIESC that was also developed in between Cornwall, Jolly, and Nyanzi's analysis. One can observe these efforts practiced within the University of the Philippines, our country's national university. So the University of the Philippines Diliman Gender Office, or the UPDGO, has been active in promoting SOGIESC in gender-related trainings since its founding in 1999. As an office mandated to forward gender mainstreaming in the campus, UPDGO further aimed for SOGIESC inclusion by introducing a SOGIESC officer in 2019. That would be me. SOGIESC soon became integrated into the UPDGO's training program, which made it integral in the modules of the office, sparking a motion of SOGIESC mainstreaming in different programs such as research and publication, advocacy and campaign, extension work, and gender and development. While the Yogyakarta principles remain as the primary source for SOGIESC, the office considers this only as a starting point in localizing concepts of SOGIESC, which is still tied to global and Western definitions. Filipino sexual and gender identities such as bakla, tomboy, mentefwale, minamagkit, agi, bayot, etc. are yet to be fully understood, especially since definitions may also vary in every community. So GSE as a framework proves to be dynamic, even a work in progress, but its principles of diversity and inclusion are key concepts that can be inserted in GAN to transform heteronormative and binary mechanisms and open up the framework for persons of diverse SOGIESC and other underrepresented groups. UP Diliman's mechanisms on GAD strive to be holistic through the involvement of development practitioners, activists, while still very much tied to the academe, since we are an academic institution. With GAD mandates in place and with a gender and development focal point system, maximizing organizing every school unit to have a GAD committee, injecting SOGIESC into the awareness-raising campaigns of UPDGO allows significant changes in the handling of gender-related concerns. For instance, training modules related to SOGIESC have been initiated, and we have inserted topics on LGBT history, HIV/AIDS awareness, and gender-fair language. Activities that raise awareness on SOGIESC are also being conducted. Also, we had inclusivity in protocols on gender-based violence, wherein a new understandings on violence and discrimination experienced by men and persons of diverse SOGIESC, alongside continuing efforts to prevent and respond to violence against women or VOW. University policies have also been reviewed and proposals for inclusion of SOGIESC-related concerns have been raised. Sexual and reproductive rights awareness campaigns have been strengthened, while sexual and reproductive rights products like condoms, lubricants, menstrual pads, tampons are currently being distributed for free within the campus. With these developments introduced, it didn't take long for the impacts. The student registration process and graduation rights of different colleges have slowly integrated the use of lived names and pronouns. The local university police has renamed its Women and Children's Desk to Gender Desk to cater to persons of diverse SOGIESC. and educational platforms initiated by LGBTQ plus student organization UP Diliman, like the very first Philippine Queer Studies Conference and the online resource website Rainbow Hub, have been initiated to further allow accessible conversation and discourses on queer and gender studies to flourish. To further advocate for visibility and recognition, the UP Center for Women's and Gender Studies also initiated parallel efforts in enacting university guidelines on affirming transgender and gender non-conforming students, and they have also crafted a SOGIESC primer. Outside the institutions, we have also included and helped in the development of the Cultural Center of the Philippines Safe Spaces Handbook, and a nearby city of Caloocan created their own SOGIESC primer to educate their own city. So these are small steps amidst numerous hurdles that still suppress SOGIESC rights in the university, because there are still many challenges that we need to face. When the UPDGO conducted research and data gathering on UP Diliman's SOGIESC situation as of 2021, it was found that many LGBTQ plus students still experience SOGIESC-based discrimination despite recognition of initiatives to protect them. Lack of data and mechanisms have contributed to this problem, especially since university service providers still lack awareness of SOGIESC rights, if not hesitant to consider them. Protocols remain binary, evident in a lack of respect towards names, pronouns, and titles, especially of transgender and gender nonconforming students. But systemic shortcomings also affect these issues, such as understaffing and lack of monitoring mechanisms. 4 years of effort since the SOGIESC officer was introduced in the UPDGO, there have been numerous instances where homophobic and transphobic remarks and practices have been raised to our office. And experiences in conducting trainings, this is a personal experience, have shown that several cisgender men can still be very apprehensive towards gender sensitivity, especially SOGIESC. Men's formations like fraternities are also controversial perpetrators of SOGIESC-based hate speech, especially in online platforms, sparking campaigns among students to abolish fraternities within the campus. These are clear manifestations of several problems that are still needed to be addressed and hopefully resolved. So while far from what Jolly and Cornwall have observed as rise in opposition, in international development institutions, residual heteronormative stances still need to be addressed within the UP, within UP Diliman. Since most of the aforementioned efforts are mere introductions and initial developments in GAD, sustained action to increase SOGIESC mainstreaming is still a relevant undertaking. This is where Nyanzi's recommendations can be utilized as a guide for current mechanisms in GAD mainstreaming. Taking cue from this, recommendations for UP Diliman include the following. So I cannot go one by one because of time constraints, but I can provide a copy of my paper if you would like. So what is so far achieved is the introduction of SOGIESC in GAD mainstreaming, but it is still far from transformative impacts to further diminish binary tendencies within the university's key programs and to fully address concerns of persons of diverse SOGIESC. Like Cornwall and Jolly's assessment on the global scale, SOGIESC mainstreaming in our campus remains sporadic in view of continuing LGBTQ plus discrimination and violence. Institutionalization of SOGIESC within the university's bylaws seems to be the likely resolution. But here is where Nyanzi's challenges to heteronormative frameworks of development must be emphasized. We must open up development as a space for activism, with women, persons of diverse SOGIESC, and male allies heavily involved in the university's development processes. The community must be engaged in reconceptualizing its own priorities in development, especially in this period where unfair treatment of contractual workers, demolition of nearby residential areas, rising prices of goods and services affected by a period of economic inflation, threats to academic freedom and political repression add more burden to those affected by SOGIESC-based discrimination and violence. Beyond the framework, SOGIESC is recommended to be recontextualized according to the material conditions of the community for it to be truly appreciated within development practices. So on a personal note, I'd like to insert the potentialities of gender and development transforming into SOGIESC and development, which I see is the new frontier that would hopefully include sexuality within development. When I brought up this paper to my partner, who is somewhere around here, he jokingly quipped, "God transformed to so God." But that is precisely what we aim for, something bigger, better, and more inclusive. It's not just including SOGIESC. We should be conscious of what Cornwall and Jolly have stated as add LGBT and STIR within GAD frameworks. This is just one way of attaining SOGIESC equality, of course. If all else fails, we can rely on our continuing activism and collective solidarity. Queers fight back, SOGIESC equality now. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.